boxing fans. So I'm not a Canelo Alvarez fan. I was a Golovkin fan. And because of that, obviously I supported Golovkin and cheered against Canelo Alvarez. But the fact that I find myself needing to defend Canelo Alvarez and what he's done in his career just shows you the disdain and hate in boxing for certain athletes. This cat here, of course, making his video today, coming off of what was a very solid performance from Canelo Alvarez. A guy that at this point of his career doesn't have anything else to prove in his career. Is considered potentially the best Mexican fighter of all time. We can have the debate about that, but it is a real consideration, right? I'm making a video later today, check it out, which is going to talk about, the fighters today that are all top guys and literally what they've done in the 2020s, and try to compare all these other great fighters to Canelo Alvarez and see if they're doing what he's done or not. So stay tuned to that. It will be released later on today. But when I saw this video, it's just like more of the fucking same, right? Like literally, that's what this is.
Y'all know damn well we got to talk about this.
There you go. Canelo fails to KO the cherry-picked Edgar Berlanga. What kind of performance was this? See, this is the problem with these kind of guys that think they are boxing fans. Of course, everybody can make a boxing YouTube channel now, and this is just an example of that. Look at this comment. Benavidez will destroy Canelo at this point. He couldn't destroy Caleb Plant. He couldn't destroy a 40-year-old guy coming out of retirement in Bostic. But all of a sudden, he's going to destroy Canelo Alvarez. I understand there's a lot of Canelo haters that are now jumping on the David Benavidez train. And primarily, that's what they're doing. It's not that they're Benavidez fans. They're just trying to find somebody that can beat Canelo Alvarez. And in truth, stylistically, David Benavidez matches up pretty well for Canelo, right? He's not a guy that's fleet of foot. He's a plotter. Doesn't have, I don't think his hands are faster than Canelo. He's got fast hands for a big dude, but this is a guy that's primarily relied on his size advantage for the majority of his career, right? Got a good jab. It'll be interesting to see how effective it is against Canelo Alvarez. Obviously, that's a great fight, and we all want to see it. And let's knock on wood that does happen in 2025, because it definitely should happen. But at the same time, this kind of rhetoric, right? I bet he didn't have to say this kind of rhetoric about fucking David Benavidez' less than fucking exciting performance against Bostic. I bet he hyped that shit up as if somehow David Benavidez conquered the fucking world, right? Like, all of a sudden now people are being discrediting of people because they're not scoring KO performances. Yet a lot of these guys dick ride guys like Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson and Floyd Mayweather, who never scored knockouts, right? That's the irony in this whole conversation. These guys that support dudes that never knocked out fucking anybody, all of a sudden are using knockouts as a way to discredit fighters who've done very well knocking people out. But when you step up your levels, when you go to your fourth weight division, ironically enough, it's not that easy to score knockouts anymore. David Benavidez is the perfect example of that. He went up to 175, and no matter how many times he hit fucking Bostic, he never looked like he was going to knock him out. Never. He fought Caleb Plant at 168. We already saw Canelo Alvarez knock out Caleb Plant. David Benavidez beat him up, but wasn't able to stop him. Right? Like, to try to use KO as some sort of way to discredit someone, this truly is the issue that you got to point out to certain people. Because, well, a KO is exceptional. We talked about how Golovkin was destroying people, how Tank Davis was destroying people, how Better Biev was destroying people. Sure. But a lot of people don't think Better Biev is going to stop Bivol. Does this mean he's a bum? No. It just means now he's fighting a guy stylistically that's not going to be easy to stop. So if he beats him, potentially it's going to be by decision. right? Tank Davis. We know Tank Davis is an exceptional knockout puncher, but eventually he's going to run into stylistic matchups that aren't going to allow him to do that, right? Golovkin knocked out everyone he was supposed to knock out, but then once he stepped up and fought certain fighters, now the knockouts did not roll, because that's what happens. You can go back to the greatest fighters in boxing history and you see this is consistent. But some people want to ignore that. Why? To push hate, really. And that's what this is about. Like this guy's channel, you got 421 views, and primarily the majority of these people are coming here to do what? Just hate.
Right. The Canelo versus Edgar Berlanga circuit is finally over.
Circus. Like whenever there's a big fight, it's going to be a bit of a circus. That's the whole point of a pay-per-view. Right? Tank Davis versus Frank Martin, circus. Right? You know, Fury Usyk, circus. Pacquiao, Mayweather, circus. Pacquiao versus McGregor, circus. When you have big fights that are pay-per-view, there's going to be a circus around them. There should be a circus around them, because what you're trying to do is get casual people to support the fight, the event, and pay for it.
And you know, I just had to come on here and ask you guys a couple of questions because I did not watch this fight. I went back and I watched the highlights. Let's talk about it, right? Because I
didn't even watch the fight because I'm a cheap ass broke motherfucker that didn't want to pay for the pay-per-view. But I'm going to come here and act as if somehow I'm an educated boxing fan or a boxing YouTube channel and break this shit down, even though all I watched was highlights. I'm a Liverpool fan. Whenever Liverpool's being discussed as a potential transfer to certain players, you can go look at the highlights and those players look phenomenal. They look like the next fucking Messi. But we know that highlights are deceiving and they don't tell the whole story.
Some questions for you guys, man. You know, so the first thing, the elephant in the room, was that Canelo could not get this guy out of there. This fight went the distance. So
now let me ask a question. How is this the elephant in the room when Canelo Alvarez was fighting a guy who was way bigger than him? Came into the fight almost 200 pounds, right? That's what's being reported, that he was 198 pounds walking into that fight. This is a 168-pound fight, but the guy came in almost fucking heavyweight weight, right? And physically you could see him in there. He was big. Canelo hit him with lots of great shots. He absorbed them, took the body shots, even though on multiple occasions you could see that they hurt him a lot. But because you're so big physically, you can naturally absorb more. That's just a boxing norm. Anyone that watches the sport of boxing understands that. That's why we talk about there being weight classes, and weight classes are there for a reason, right? What Canelo Alvarez is doing against much bigger fighters is something to be applauded, right? Tank Davis is fighting at 135. He doesn't want to move to 140, where now he's going to have to be fighting bigger fighters who are going to be able to absorb his power, and he's going to be less destructive at that weight class. That's true. That's just a fact.
You know, Canelo couldn't get Edgar Berlanga out of there. You know, he had a bad performance. You know, he didn't do his thing, this and that. You know, who do I saw?
Literally, I didn't hear anyone say that Canelo had a bad performance. On my scorecard, Canelo swept that fight. He won all 12 rounds and also dropped Berlanga in the third round, scoring a 10-8 round in that fight. And sure, he didn't finish Berlanga, but he easily won that fight. Clearly. So as far as the bad performance, I don't understand how you beating a guy convincingly, sweeping the fight, dropping him with a beautiful left is somehow you not performing well.
I like right now, bro, saying this kind of stuff. Do I not sound like what the Canelo groupies were sounding like when David Benavidez went the distance with Bosdick? So,
see, the irony is now he's attacking Canelo fans, but obviously what he is a David Benavidez fanboy. But yet, David Benavidez is a guy who just moved up to a second weight division. And he's a guy who literally talked about going up to cruiserweight before, right? How effective do you think he's going to be a cruiserweight right now based on how ineffective he was at 175, right? He's still young, and we'll see what he does at 175. Maybe he'll grow into the weight and become the baddest man on the planet at that weight class. But at this point, he's unproven, hasn't done shit at 175. At 168, his resume is mediocre, and his accomplishments at that weight are also mediocre. This is a guy that's a two-time champion, and both times he lost his title were because of his stupidity and unprofessionalism.
My first question to you guys is, are y'all going to keep the same energy? You know, because when Benavidez went the distance with Bosdick, y'all were out here saying that he...
Bosdick is a retired fighter who'd been out of the sport for 4 fucking years and had just got knocked out 4 years earlier by better BF. Berlanga has never been knocked out. Sure, he's been dropped, but being dropped and being stopped is a little different. This is also the same David Benavidez that fought Caleb Plant, a guy that Canelo Alvarez had previously stopped at 168. When Plant fought Benavidez, again, Benavidez wasn't able to stop him. So when people are trying to highlight the fact that Benavidez' weight bully tactics and Mexican monster narrative is just a hype, there's not a lot of truth to it. There can only be truth to it if you're actually proving it in the ring. His performances against Plant, his performance against Bosdick shine light on the fact that this is more hype than truth. Canelo Alvarez has already had a Hall of Fame career. David Benavidez is nowhere in the fucking conversation. So right now you're comparing apples to oranges.
Had a bad performance, right? So let's compare the two fights. You know, Benavidez moving up in weight, jumping up to 175, fighting a former world champion.
Now listen to this spin. So David Benavidez moved up in weight. Well, isn't this Canelo's 4th weight division? Hasn't he already moved through 4 weight classes? And truthfully, 5, but 4 weight classes where he was a world champion. 5 weight classes he's boxed as a professional. David Benavidez spent his whole career at 168, missed weight years ago, but stayed at the weight so he could use weight bully tactics against smaller fighters, like pulling up David Lemieux, a middleweight, to 168 to beat him, to get the biggest name on his resume, only to duck unification fights at 168, and then once Canelo Alvarez cleaned out the weight, act as if somehow Canelo Alvarez is ducking you. Yet blatantly, you duck Smith, you duck Plant, you duck fucking Zerto, you ducked other unification fights at that weight division. You even ducked Morrell, an in-house fucking PBC fighter. And now you're gonna fucking act like Bosdick somehow is a monster. But Bosdick literally has been retired for 4 fucking years. Retired. Not inactive, retired. After getting knocked out by better BF, he retired from the sport of boxing.
Hurt hands, a cut above his eye, goes in there, completely dominates the fight, and supposedly it was a bad performance, right? So Canelo at 168 doing the same old shit, fighting a cherry-picked opponent that was picked to make...
So Berlanga's a cherry pick that was picked to make Canelo look good, as if Canelo needs to look good. Whereas Benavidez moving up to his 2nd weight division, cherry picking Bosdick, who actually is part of Reynoso's stable. You tell me which one's a cherry pick and which one was picked specifically to make someone look good, right? Canelo's already an undisputed champion at 168. Benavidez is fucking nothing at 175, literally nothing.
Canelo looked good. That was picked so Canelo could get a knockout. You know, Edgar Berlanga has no experience fighting at that high level. Edgar Berlanga was not a former world champion. He hasn't won no titles. Like I said, he hasn't even fought at the high level.
And the irony with this kind of narrative, this is the same kind of diatribe people were saying when Canelo fought Ryder, who most people feel beat Callum Smith for his WBA title. but was robbed in the cards and had been in with world champions and had been in with world champions and high-level fighters on multiple occasions, yet he was a cherry pick. Jaime Munguia, who literally was a world champion as well, he was a cherry pick. Like Charlo, an undisputed 154-pound champion, he was a cherry pick, right? If they fight Bud Crawford, he will be a cherry pick. Dimitri Bivol, who was a 175-pound WBA champion, undefeated, he was a cherry pick. Makabu, a cruiserweight WBC world champion, he was a cherry pick. Literally, it doesn't matter who Canelo fights. From dudes like this, it's always going to be seen as a cherry pick. If he signs to fight fucking David Benavidez, guaranteed people are then going to come out and put the spin on it that fucking Benavidez is not that good. He hasn't really done that much. He was a weight bully for most of his career. You're going to hear all this narrative once the fight gets signed, because then the reality is going to hit that they can't give Canelo credit for fighting Benavidez and potentially beating him. So they're going to start finding ways to discredit Benavidez. So if Canelo beats him, then they can go say, oh, see, I already told you, this guy was a weight bully. He hadn't really done anything. He ducked unification fights at 168 before, right? You know that's true. You know it and I know it. These dudes are full of shit. They're not boxing fans. They're just haters. Literally haters.
And Canelo could not get him out of it. You know, so this is all I'm trying to figure out, bro. Because this is a serious question, man. Like I told you guys, I did not watch the fight, so you guys tell me. Leave it down in the comment section. Was it?
That's all we need to know. He didn't watch the fight. So why would we give him any fucking credit or pay attention to anything he has to say? Because you didn't watch the fight. So you can't compare Canelo's performance to David Benavidez's performance against Gvozdyk. And even your breakdown, you failed to fucking address the fact that Gvozdyk was coming off of 4 years of retirement. You're failing to address that the last time he was in with an elite fighter, he was knocked out and sent into retirement, right? You're not being forthright with all the information. You're cherry picking the facts to try to do what? Fanboy David Benavidez and shit on Canelo Alvarez. But I can guarantee you 100%, $1,000 American on the fucking table, that at the end of the day, when David Benavidez retires from the sport of boxing, his career is not going to be fucking close to what Canelo Alvarez has done. And the dude's got at least 10 years to add to his legacy. But I guarantee you, it ain't going to be fucking anywhere close to Canelo Alvarez. Let me know in the comments section below what you think. Thanks for watching.